I would like to welcome all who tuned in to another edition of Treasures. Today's treasure is number 96, and the title is My Name Was. We're going to talk about names today. In today's treasure, we're going to talk about two Hebrew men in the Bible that their names were totally changed to try and make them become part of the culture they were in. We're going to talk about Joseph, and his story is found in Genesis. In the following scriptures, we will see what got Joseph in trouble with his family also. We're going to read Genesis. I'm going to start chapter 37, verses 5 through 9, and this is a New King James Version. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf." Oh, this is not going to be good. Verse 8, and his brothers said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Verse 9, then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." Can you imagine what his brothers are thinking now? Now we see his brothers plot to kill him, and the reference is Genesis chapter 37, 17 through 24. I'm going to read Genesis 37, verses 25 through 28, New King James Version. And they sat down to eat a meal. Then they lifted their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing spices, balm and myrrh, on their way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" He's thinking about a prophet here. "Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then a Midianite traders passed by. So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit that he was in, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. And now they're thinking, all our problems are over. And now we see Joseph arrives in Egypt and starts to work for a man named Potiphar, and his wife tries to seduce Joseph to sleep with her, and Joseph flees, leaving his coat there at Potiphar's home. So his wife lies, and Joseph ends up in prison. See Genesis chapter 39, 8 through 19, and Genesis 39, 20 through 23. But while in prison, he finds favor with the top guard in the prison. See Genesis chapter 40, 1 through 23. Now listen to this. Now while in prison, Pharaoh has a dream, but all his magicians couldn't figure out what the dream meant. Now after 2 years go by, the cupbearer who was in prison with Joseph reveals Joseph can interpret dreams. See Genesis chapter 41, 15 through 25. Now here's an interesting fact. I took all this research out of Perry Stone's Study Bible of the Old Testament. Genesis 41:32 says this, "And the dream was repeated to Pharaoh twice, because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass." So Joseph finds favor with Pharaoh, and he's made second in command over Egypt. Then Pharaoh changes his name to Zaphanath Paneah. And according to rabbinical commentary, it means he who explains what is hidden based upon Joseph's gift to reveal Pharaoh's dreams. Think about that. God took care of Joseph. Next, we're going to talk about Daniel, who was taken into Babylonian captivity by King Nebuchadnezzar for 70 years. And again, we're going to see what happened to Daniel, how his name was changed. Daniel and his 3 friends, whose names were changed by King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar, meaning a prince of Bel, a false god. All these are false gods they're being named after. Think about it. And that references Daniel 4, verse 8. Hananiah, his name was changed to Shadrach. Rak was the name of the Babylonian sun god. Thus, Shadrach can mean messenger of the sun. The 3rd captive, Mishael, was given the Babylonian name Meshach, meaning who is Aku. Next, Azariah's name became Abednego, meaning servant of Nebo, the Babylonian god of science and literature. For that reference, see Isaiah chapter 46, verse 1. It is interesting to note that when Daniel stood before the king of Babylon and later before the Medes, these kings used his Babylonian name. And see, for the references, see Daniel chapter 1, 7, verse 7, chapter 2, verse 26, chapter 4, 8 and 9, and 18 and 19, chapter 5, verse 12, and also chapter 10, verse 1. But listen to this. Daniel himself refused to use his Babylonian name when penning the words and visions in his book, the book of Daniel, except in Daniel chapter 10, verse 1. Instead, he called himself by his Hebrew name, Daniel. Think about this. Daniel was determined, as were his friends, not to lose their Jewish roots and identity while in Babylon. See, they were trying to change them to a Babylonian culture, change their names. They were all false gods. Remember, they worshiped who? Yahweh was the God in the Old Testament. So in closing, we see in Joseph's story, God showed him favor no matter where he was, in a pit, sold as a slave, put in prison. Then he found favor in prison, interpreted a dream for Pharaoh, made him second in command of all Egypt. So this tells us what? Romans 8:31, New King James Version. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? Think about it. Nebuchadnezzar wanted to take away his Jewish heritage and change him into a Babylonian citizen. Daniel did not pay close attention, this culture change him, and it did not affect his friends either. They stayed true to their God, Yahweh. Daniel and Joseph never compromised on their beliefs or the worship of Yahweh God. In closing, I want to say this. We as the body of Christ, the churches, are supposed to change the culture to follow God's laws and all the words in his Bible, his commandments. But what's going on today, the churches are allowing the culture to change the churches. Mario Murillo has a great saying. The big churches, not all of them, love fog machines, skinny jeans, and big screens. It's almost like nightclubs. And that's wrong. Instead, We need to take a stand and again start changing the culture. Was absolutely is what? Depraved. I hope you enjoyed this treasure, and until we meet again, may the Lord bless you and keep you.